She never
Ma'am, the
spoke
cake
unless
is
someone
gone.
asked her
Gone.
to.
What do you
In
mean
that
gone?
big,
It
shining
collapsed. I'm so
house,
sorry.
people
This is a
called her "Don't
disaster."
Speak." She was the black cook. Every morning, she woke up before sunrise. She washed her hands, tied her hair, and walked quietly into the kitchen. She cooked meals worth more money than she had ever seen. Gold plates, crystal glasses, long tables, important guests, powerful people, but no one ever looked at her. To them, she was just a shadow moving between pots and pans. The house belonged to a billionaire woman, a powerful boss, a name everyone knew. She was strong, confident, and respected. People feared her decisions. People followed her orders. But even powerful people have blind spots. And one night, that blind spot almost destroyed everything. The cook had learned something very early in life. Silence keeps you alive. She did not talk about her past. She did not complain. She did not ask questions. She listened. And that night, listening changed everything. It was late. Too late. The house was quiet. No guests. No meetings. No lights in the long hallway. The cook stayed behind to clean the kitchen. She moved slowly, carefully like always. Her footsteps made no sound on the cold floor. Then she heard it. A soft noise. Not loud. Not clear. Just enough to make her stop. She looked toward the hallway that led to the private rooms. She was not supposed to be there. Staff never went there at night. But something felt wrong. Her heart started to beat faster. She told herself to ignore it, to go home, to stay silent. But her feet moved on their own. She walked closer. A door was not fully closed. Light leaked through the small opening. And then she saw him. The billionaire's husband. The man everyone trusted. The man who smiled at cameras. The man who spoke about love and loyalty. The man who controlled security, staff, and money. He was doing something he should never do. Something dark. Something illegal. Something that could destroy lives. The cook froze. Her hands shook. Her mind screamed, "Run!" But her body did not move. In that moment, she understood one thing very clearly. If she spoke, she would be in danger. If she stayed silent, someone innocent could get hurt. Her silence had always protected her. Now it was a curse. The husband suddenly stopped. He turned his head. Their eyes met. Time slowed down. The cook felt cold fear spread through her chest. He stared at her for a long second. Then he smiled. A slow, calm smile. A smile that did not reach his eyes. He said nothing. She said nothing. He closed the door. The hallway went dark again. The cook stood there alone, breathing hard. Her legs felt weak. Her whole body trembled. She knew one thing for sure. He knew she had seen everything. That night, she did not sleep. She sat in her small room, staring at the wall. Every sound made her jump. Every shadow felt like danger. Questions filled her mind. Should she tell the billionaire boss? Would anyone believe a silent cook? What if the husband denied everything? What if he punished her first? The billionaire trusted her husband with her life. But the cook now knew the truth. The next morning, the house looked the same. Clean. Perfect. Calm. The billionaire sat at the table, reading news on her tablet. She looked powerful. Untouchable. The cook served breakfast like always. The husband walked in, smiling, confident, acting normal. But when he passed the cook, he leaned closer and whispered softly, "Remember, you don't speak." The cook lowered her eyes. Inside, her heart burned. That was not a warning. That was a threat. From that moment, the cook understood something important. This was no longer just a secret. This was a game. A dangerous game where one wrong move could cost her job or her life. But the cook was not weak. She was silent. And silence can be powerful. She decided she would not scream. She would not accuse. She would not run. She would wait. She would watch. And when the time was right, she would save the billionaire boss without speaking a single word. Because sometimes the quietest person in the room is the only one who knows the truth. And this was only the beginning. Fire in that big house. People believed they knew everyone. They knew the billionaire boss. They knew her powerful husband. They knew the guards, the managers, the guests. But no one really knew the black cook. She moved quietly through the house, like air. She arrived before everyone woke up and left after everyone slept. Her apron was always clean. Her food was always perfect. Yet her name was never spoken with respect. To most people, She was invisible. The staff talked around her, not to her. They laughed, complained, shared secrets and plans. They never lowered their voices when she was near. They believed she did not understand. They believed she did not matter. They were wrong. The cook had learned how to listen without being seen. She heard arguments behind closed doors. She noticed when smiles were fake. She felt tension before it exploded. And she remembered everything. Her silence was not weakness. It was training. Long before she entered this house, life had taught her hard lessons. She grew up in a place where speaking could bring pain, where questions could bring punishment, where quiet children survived longer. So she learned to stay calm. She learned to hide fear. She learned to wait. When she got the job in the billionaire's house, she promised herself one thing. I will do my work. I will stay silent. I will survive. And for a long time, it worked. The billionaire boss never treated her badly. She paid well. She was strict but fair. She trusted the cook with her meals, her health, and her routine. But trust is strange. The billionaire trusted her food, but not her voice. If the cook tried to speak, people became uncomfortable. They changed the topic. They walked away. Some even smiled and said, "You don't need to talk." Slowly, her silence became part of her identity. "Don't speak," they joked. The cook accepted it. Until that night, after seeing what the husband was doing, the cook felt something new inside her. Fear, yes, but also anger. Not loud anger. Not wild anger. Cold anger. The next days were heavy. The husband changed. He watched her closely. He appeared in the kitchen more often. He asked small questions with sharp eyes. "How are you? You work late. You see many things here." His words sounded polite, but the meaning was clear. He was checking her silence. The cook answered with short words. "Yes, sir. No, sir. I understand." But inside, her mind was moving fast. She knew this man was dangerous. He was smart. He controlled the house in ways no one noticed. Security listened to him. Staff respected him. The billionaire trusted him fully. If she went to the boss and spoke the truth, it could turn against her. One word from him, and she could disappear. Lose her job. Lose her safety. Lose her life. That night had changed the rules. Now, silence was no longer enough. The cook began to observe more carefully than ever. She noticed how the husband avoided certain rooms. She noticed how he erased messages quickly. She noticed how guards followed his orders without question. She also noticed something else. The billionaire boss was tired. She worked long hours. She trusted the wrong person. She believed her home was safe. The cook watched her boss closely. She saw small signs of danger. Missed meals, sudden headaches, strange tension in the house. And slowly, the cook understood the truth. The billionaire boss was not just being lied to. She was in danger. The cook stood at the kitchen sink one morning, washing dishes, when the husband walked in. He stood behind her, too close. "You are very loyal," he said calmly. "I like that." The cook did not turn around. Loyalty. That word felt heavy, because loyalty to him meant silence forever. But loyalty to the truth meant risk. That day, the cook made a choice. She would stay silent, but not powerless. She would not accuse. She would not expose him openly. She would not become an easy target. Instead, she would protect the billionaire boss in her own way. Quietly, carefully, smartly. From that moment, every meal mattered. Every routine mattered. Every small detail mattered. The cook was no longer just cooking food. She was watching a storm build inside the house. And she knew one thing for sure. If she failed, no one would ever know the truth. If she succeeded, the world would never look at her the same way again. The woman no one noticed was about to change the fate of a billionaire. Without speaking, and the most dangerous part of the story had not even begun yet. Fire from the outside, the billionaire's life looked perfect. Her house stood tall behind iron gates. Clean gardens, quiet halls, guards at every corner. Inside, everything followed strict rules. Time, order, discipline. She was known as a woman who never lost control. People admired her strength. News channels praised her success. Employees respected her power. To the world, she was untouchable. And beside her stood her husband. Calm, charming, well-spoken. He smiled for cameras. He held her hand in public. He spoke about trust, family, and and loyalty. People said he was the reason she stayed balanced. They said he protected her from stress. No one questioned him. No one suspected him, except one person, the cook. Every morning, the billionaire sat at the long table and drank her coffee. The cook placed the cup gently, always from the same side. The billionaire never looked up. She trusted the routine. Routine creates comfort. Comfort creates blindness. The cook noticed small things others missed. The husband always tasted the food last. He asked questions about ingredients too often. He changed kitchen rules quietly, step by step. At first, it looked normal. Care, concern, attention. But the cook felt something was off. She had seen fear before. She had seen lies before. This felt familiar. The billionaire trusted her husband with everything. Security codes, schedules, staff decisions. Even health reports passed through him. He became the gatekeeper. The cook realized something dangerous. If the husband wanted to hurt the billionaire, no one would stop him. One afternoon, the billionaire canceled a meeting because she felt dizzy. Doctors were called. Tests showed nothing serious. Everyone relaxed. Everyone except the cook. That day, the soup tasted slightly different. Not bad. Not strange. Just unfamiliar. The cook knew every spice. Every smell. Every color. That soup was not made by her. The husband smiled and said, "I helped today." The billionaire laughed. The cook did not. That night, the cook stayed awake, staring at the ceiling. Her mind replayed every detail. The late nights. The closed doors. The way the husband watched her now. This was not about power anymore. This was about control. The next days felt heavier. The billionaire grew quieter. More tired. She trusted her husband even more, believing he was protecting her. But protection can look like love, until it becomes a cage. The cook saw how the husband isolated her boss. Fewer visitors. Fewer staff near her. More private moments. The cook wanted to scream, but she knew screaming would end her. So she stayed silent. She began to change small things. She watched who entered the kitchen. She double-checked every meal. She followed the routine like a soldier. One mistake could mean death. One evening, the billionaire skipped dinner. The husband said she was resting. He ordered the kitchen closed early. That was unusual. The cook felt fear rise inside her chest. She remembered the night she saw the truth. She remembered his smile. She remembered his warning. "Remember, you don't speak." The cook understood something then. The husband believed silence meant obedience. He believed she was weak. That belief was his biggest mistake. The cook was quiet, but she was not blind. She was scared, but she was not foolish. She knew she needed proof. She knew she needed timing. She knew one wrong step could destroy everything. So she waited. She watched. She listened. And slowly, the perfect world of the billionaire began to crack. A glass left in the wrong place. A meal delayed. A guard asking quiet questions. Tiny signs, but signs of a storm. The cook looked at the billionaire one morning as she passed the table. The boss smiled tiredly and nodded. In that moment, the cook felt something strong inside her. Not fear, responsibility. She did not wear a badge. She did not carry a weapon. She had no voice people respected. But she had the truth. And the truth, once released, could destroy the most powerful man in the house. The cook knew this story would not end quietly. Someone would fall. Someone would be exposed. Someone would pay the price. And soon, the silence in that house will be broken forever. But before that happened, the cook had one last chance to save the billionaire boss. Without speaking a single word, the most dangerous part was coming. And everyone was still pretending. Everything was perfect. Fire that night did not start like a disaster. It started quiet. Too quiet. The house slept under soft lights. Guards stood still. Cameras blinked red like tired eyes. The billionaire boss had finished a long day and gone to her private room early. The cook stayed behind, like many nights before. She cleaned the kitchen slowly. She wiped the counters twice. She checked the doors. Routine helped her calm her mind. Routine made fear smaller. But something felt wrong. The air felt heavy. The silence felt sharp. She heard a sound again. Not loud. Not clear. A soft movement that did not belong. The cook froze. She turned off the water and listened. There was again A door opening, then stopping. Her heart beat faster. Staff were not allowed in the private wing at night. Everyone knew that rule. Only one person moved freely there. The husband. The cook told herself to stop, to finish her work, to go home, but her hands would not move. She walked slowly toward the hallway. Each step felt dangerous. The lights were dim. Shadows stretched along the walls. The house felt different now, like it was holding its breath. She reached the corner. One door was not fully closed. Light escaped through the small gap. The cook leaned closer, and then she saw it. Inside the room, the billionaire's husband was standing near the desk. His voice was low, angry, cold. He was talking to someone on the phone. The cook could not hear every word, but she heard enough. Threats, orders, plans that should never exist. Then she saw what he was holding. Something small, something hidden, something dangerous. Her chest tightened. This was worse than she feared. This was not a mistake. This was not a moment of weakness. This was planned. The cook felt her legs shake. She tried to step back. The floor creaked. The husband stopped talking. He turned slowly. Their eyes met. For a moment, neither moved. The cook felt her breath leave her body. He stared at her without emotion. Then he smiled. Not a friendly smile. Not a surprised smile. A knowing smile. He ended the call calmly and placed the object on the table. He walked toward the door. The cook wanted to run, but her body refused. He stopped just a few steps away. "You work late," he said softly. The cook lowered her eyes. "Yes, sir." Her voice sounded far away, like it did not belong to her. He studied her face. "You see many things in this house," he continued. "Many things that are not your concern." She nodded. "I don't speak," she said quietly. That made him smile again. "Good," he replied. "That is why you still work here." He closed the door gently. The hallway went dark. The cook stood frozen, shaking from head to toe. That night, fear became real. Not imagined. Not distant. Real. She went back to her room and locked the door. She sat on the floor with her back against the wall. Her heart would not slow down. She replayed the moment again and again. His eyes. His smile. His calm voice. He was not scared. He was confident, because he believed silence meant control. The cook did not sleep. When morning came, the house woke up like nothing had happened. Birds sang outside. Coffee machines started. Guards changed shifts. The billionaire boss came down for breakfast. She looked tired. The cook placed the tray carefully. Her hands were steady now. Fear had turned into something else. Focus. The husband entered the room moments later. He kissed the billionaire's cheek and smiled warmly. "Good morning," he said. The cook watched him closely. She saw the lie in his smile. She saw the danger in his calm. When he passed her, he whispered again, "Remember what you are." The cook did not answer. But inside, something had changed. That night taught her a hard truth. She was no longer just a witness. She was a problem. And problems like her were removed quietly. The cook understood now. This was not about telling the truth loudly. This was about surviving long enough to protect someone else. She could not run. She could not accuse. She could not trust anyone. She only had time. And time was running out. The night everything broke was over. But what followed would be far more dangerous. Because once a secret is seen, it can never be unseen. And the husband knew it. So did the cook. The game had truly begun. Fire from that night on, nothing felt normal. The house was the same. The walls were clean. The lights were bright. Guards still stood at their posts. But the air had changed. It felt watched. The cook felt it the moment she stepped into the kitchen. Every sound seemed louder. Every shadow seemed closer. She knew she was no longer invisible. The husband had not raised his voice. He had not threatened her openly. That made him more dangerous. He started coming into the kitchen more often. Sometimes he just stood there, silent, watching her work. Other times, he asked simple questions. "How long have you worked here? Do you like this job? Do you plan to stay?" The questions sounded kind, but his eyes were cold. The cook answered carefully. Short words. Calm voice. "No emotion." "Yes, sir. I am grateful, sir. I will stay." Inside, her heart was racing. She knew what he was doing. He was testing her silence, testing her fear, testing how much she knew. The cook understood something important. If he believed she was weak, he would act. If he believed she was loyal, he would relax. So she acted loyal. She worked harder than before. She followed every rule. She avoided eye contact. She kept her head down, but she watched everything. She noticed the husband spoke quietly with guards. She noticed some staff members were suddenly removed. She noticed cameras being checked at strange times. He was cleaning the house, removing risks, and she was the biggest risk of all. At night, the cook locked her door. She slept lightly, waking at every sound. She kept her phone charged. She memorized schedules. Fear sharpened her mind. One evening, she heard raised voices behind a closed door. The billionaire boss sounded upset. The husband spoke softly, calming her. Later that night, the cook saw the boss sitting alone, staring at nothing. She looked smaller, weaker. The cook felt a tight pain in her chest. The danger was getting closer. The cook knew she could not wait forever, but she also knew moving too fast would destroy her. So she planned. She thought about the one place she controlled, the kitchen. Food came from her hands. Timing came from her routine. Details passed through her eyes. She began to make small changes. She checked deliveries herself. She cleaned surfaces twice. She kept quiet notes in her mind. The husband noticed. "You are very careful," he said one morning. The cook nodded. "I must be," she replied. He smiled. That smile meant he was watching. One afternoon, the husband entered the kitchen alone. He leaned against the counter, too relaxed. "You know," he said calmly, "people like you survive by knowing their place." The cook stayed quiet. "Speaking can be dangerous," he continued. "Silence keeps you safe." She nodded again. But inside, something burned. Silence had kept her alive. But silence was also letting evil grow. That night, the cook stood in the kitchen after everyone left. She looked at her reflection in the metal surface of the stove. She did not look powerful. She did not look brave. But she was still standing. She realized something then. The husband believed control came from fear. But real control came from patience. He rushed. She waited. He watched her. She studied him. The cook began to see patterns. When the husband was nervous, he skipped meals. When he was confident, he stayed close to the boss. When something went wrong, he blamed staff. These patterns told a story, and stories lead to truth. One morning, the billionaire boss collapsed in the hallway. Doctors rushed in. Panic spread. The husband acted calm, helpful, supportive. The cook stood in the background, silent. But her eyes were wide. This was no accident. She felt it in her bones. As the doctors worked, the husband glanced at her. His look was sharp, a warning. The cook understood. Time was running out. If she did nothing, the billionaire might not survive. If she acted too soon, she would be destroyed. The silent game had reached its most dangerous stage. That night, the cook made a decision. She would stop waiting. She would not confront. She would not accuse. She would protect. In her own way. Quietly. Carefully. Smartly. Because in a house full of power, money and weapons, the most dangerous thing of all was a woman who stayed silent and started to act. The next move would change everything, and no one would see it coming. Fire the cook knew she was running out of time. The billionaire boss was getting weaker. Some days, she skipped meals. Some days, she stayed in bed longer than usual. Doctors came and went, but no clear answers appeared. The husband stayed close to her side. Too close. He smiled more. He spoke softly. He acted like a perfect protector. To everyone else, he looked caring and calm. But the cook saw something different. She saw control. She saw impatience hidden behind kindness. That was when the cook decided to move, not loudly, not suddenly, but smartly. She understood one important thing. The husband trusted her silence. He trusted routine. He trusted the kitchen. That trust would become his weakness. The cook started with small changes. Very small. She changed the time meals were served. Just minutes. Enough to break patterns. She watched the husband's reactions. His eyes followed the plates. His fingers tapped the table. He noticed. She pretended not to. Next, she paid close attention to everything he touched. Cups, plates, bottles. She cleaned them herself. No one else. The kitchen became her battlefield. One morning, the husband brought a tray into the kitchen and said calmly, "I'll take this to her today." The cook looked at him and shook her head. "No," she said softly. "I will." It was the first time she had said no. The word hung in the air. The husband stared at her. The cook lowered her eyes and added, "Doctor's order." It was a lie, but a careful one. The husband hesitated. Then he smiled and stepped back. "Of course," he said, but the cook knew. He was angry. That day, she watched the billionaire boss carefully as she ate. The boss looked tired, but nothing happened. No dizziness. No weakness. For the first time in days, the cook felt hope. The next step was harder. She needed proof. Not words. Not feelings. Proof. The cook remembered something from long ago. A lesson she learned before this house, before this job. People who believe they are invisible see everything. That night, the cook stayed late again. She cleaned slowly. She listened. She heard the husband's voice in the private office. He was on the phone. His tone was sharp. Controlled. "No mistakes," he said. "She trusts me. Everything is under control." The cook stood still, hidden by the doorframe. Her hand shook, but she stayed. She watched him leave the room. Then she moved. She entered the office for the first time ever. Her heart felt like it would break her chest. She searched quickly. Drawers. Desk. Trash. Then she saw it. A small bottle. Hidden. Unmarked. Her breath stopped. She did not touch it. She did not take it. She memorized where it was. The next morning, the billionaire boss looked worse. The husband stayed close, almost too calm. The cook knew she could not wait another day. She made a bold move. She served breakfast late. Guards noticed. Staff whispered. The husband frowned. "What's wrong?" he asked. The cook looked him in the eyes for the first time. "The boss is not well," she said. "She should not eat this." The room went silent. The husband's face hardened for a second. Just a second. Then he smiled again. "You are just a cook," he said quietly. "Do your job." The cook nodded, but she did not move. That moment changed everything. The billionaire boss looked up, confused. "What is going on?" she asked weakly. The cook turned to her. Her voice was calm, respectful. "I am worried," she said. "I have seen things." The husband stepped forward quickly. "That's enough," he said sharply. But it was too late. The billionaire's eyes were open now. Guards stepped closer. The cook did not accuse. She did not shout. She did not cry. She simply said, "Please check." Security checked the office. They found the bottle. The husband tried to explain, to smile, to talk, but silence filled the room. This time it was his silence. The billionaire boss looked at the cook. Real understanding filled her eyes. "You saved me," she whispered. The cook lowered her head. She had done it. Not with strength. Not with power. Not with words. But with patience. With silence. With courage. The man who believed silence meant control was destroyed by it. And the cook, the woman no one noticed, had just saved a billionaire's life. But the story was not over yet. The final truth would change everything forever. Fire the house did not feel the same anymore. The silence was different now. Not heavy, not fearful, clear. The husband was gone, taken away quietly, without cameras, without speeches. The guards who once followed his orders now avoided his name. Staff whispered in corners, trying to understand how everything changed so fast. But one thing was clear. The billionaire boss was alive. She sat by the large window in her room, wrapped in a light blanket. Sunlight touched her face for the first time in many days. Her eyes were open, sharp, awake. The cook stood near the door, unsure if she should enter. "Come in," the billionaire said softly. The cook stepped forward slowly, her head lowered as always. For years, this woman had passed her food without ever meeting her eyes. Now, the billionaire looked at her directly. "They told me everything," the boss said. "Security, doctors, records." She paused. "And they told me who stopped it." The cook said nothing. Silence was still her language. The billionaire smiled weakly. "You watched when others slept. You protected me when others lied." She took a breath. "I trusted the wrong person," she continued. "And I ignored the right one." The cook felt something tight in her chest. Not fear, not anger, relief. The billionaire reached out her hand. The cook hesitated, then took it. That simple touch said more than words ever could. News spread quietly. No headlines, no public drama, just changes. The husband's name was removed from records. His access erased. His power gone. The house returned to order. But the people inside it were not the same. Staff now looked at the cook differently. Guards nodded with respect. Managers spoke carefully around her. For the first time, people noticed her presence. One afternoon, the billionaire called a meeting. All senior staff gathered in the large hall. The cook stood at the back, unsure why she was there. The billionaire entered slowly, supported by a cane, but her voice was strong. "I am alive today," she said, "because someone chose courage over comfort." She turned. Her eyes found the cook. "This woman," she said, "saved my life." A quiet shock filled the room. The cook felt her face burn. She was ignored. The billionaire continued. She was underestimated. She was silent. The billionaire paused. But silence does not mean weakness. The room stayed quiet. From that day on, things changed. The cook was offered a new role. Not because she asked, not because she demanded, because she earned it. She did not become loud. She did not become proud. She stayed the same. Calm, careful, quiet. But now when she spoke, people listened. Sometimes, the billionaire would sit with her in the kitchen. Not as a boss, not as a ruler, as a woman who survived. They talked about simple things. Food, morning light, small joys. The billionaire once asked, "Why didn't you run?" The cook thought for a moment. "Because," she said softly, "running would save me. Staying saved you." The billionaire nodded. That answer stayed with her. Weeks later, the house felt alive again. Laughter returned. Music played softly in the evenings. The storm had passed, but the lesson remained. Power does not always sit at the top. Truth does not always speak loudly. Heroes do not always look strong. Sometimes, the hero is the one no one sees. The one who listens. The one who waits. The one who stays silent until the right moment. On her last night in the old kitchen, the cook cleaned the counters slowly. She looked around the room where everything began. This place had been her shield, her weapon, her test. She took off her apron and folded it neatly. When she turned to leave, she did not look back, because her story was no longer hidden. The woman once called "Don't Speak" had spoken in the strongest way possible, with actions, with courage, with silence that saved a life. And that is the truth the world often forgets. Never underestimate the quiet one in the room, because when silence finally speaks, it can change everything. Fire.